An acid-base titration is a way to use a known concentration to calculate an unknown concentration. To set up your titration, you will need a burette, a clamp, and a ring stand. After you screw the pole into the base of the ring stand, you can attach the clamp. Insert the burette by squeezing the two sides of the clamp and placing the burette between the gray pads. Your burette will be filled with sodium hydroxide while your acid will be placed in a beaker under the burette. In this video I show an Erlenmeyer flask, but since we will be monitoring the pH, you'll need a wider neck and a beaker is a better choice. See your lab for a diagram of your setup. You should fill your burette past the top line with sodium hydroxide and then drain it until the bottom of the meniscus touches the zero line. This will be your starting volume of sodium hydroxide. In titrations, your volume is the volume you have added to the beaker, so before you add any, you should be reading 0, even though there is sodium hydroxide in your burette. Now, you should add some sodium hydroxide to the beaker by opening the stopper. I added half a milliliter, although you should not spend a lot of time trying to add the perfect amount or making sure you're right on a line. Just add a bit, let the pH stabilize, and then once you've done that, on your computer you will hit keep and type the volume of the burette that it reads now and be as accurate as you can. So if you're not right on a line, just estimate it as best you can. Since I did add exactly half a milliliter and my burette reads 0.50 milliliters, that's what I'll type into my computer. Initially you can add a half to 1 milliliter at a time, but as you notice that the pH starts to change more with each addition, you should reduce the volume of your additions, and eventually when you are near the equivalence point, you should be adding 1 drop at a time. One way to add a drop at a time is to turn the stopper very quickly 180 degrees like in this video, and that will let out about a drop with each addition as you do this. And again, you're just reading the volume then as accurately as you can on the burette. Please note, if you do a drop at a time the entire experiment, you're going to take all day to do this. So start by adding around a milliliter and then reduce the volume as the experiment progresses. Then once you're past your equivalence point, you should keep going to sort of level out your graph, but you can begin to increase the volume again. So for example, in this experiment, they added about a milliliter, then another milliliter, then another milliliter, then another milliliter, which gets us to 4 milliliters, and then they start to add a half a milliliter and continued reducing from there, and then eventually added more again. So if you've done this correctly, you should have a nice smooth curve like this one at the end. If you have big jumps in your curve, you'll probably need to repeat the trial for that acid. Then, following the instructions in your lab, you should go to the second derivative plot, which should look something like this, and you can look for the point where your graph crosses the x-axis, and whatever volume that is the volume it took for you to reach your equivalence point.